this is the busiest week yet for earnings this week. A third of the S&P 500 reporting earnings this week. Several companies expected to report today include Tesla, Coca-Cola, and Boeing, among others. Now, Apple reported its numbers last night. It was better than expectations in terms of earnings after the bell, but the quarterly results also marked the third straight quarter while Apple posted a year-over-year revenue decline. Joining us right now is the senior analyst with CFRA Research, Lindsey. Lindsey, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How would you characterize the earnings season so far?
Well, it's better than expected, as usual.
The growth is...
The growth is, it's positive. So, and this is the first quarter we're seeing positive growth in 4 quarters. So we do have that. Guidance has been okay. We usually get less companies giving guidance at this point in the year. And going into an election season, management teams typically are a little bit more negative. So I think it's an okay quarter. And I think the election's really, especially since we're so close, is really going to take the heart of the conversation.
But Lindsey, give us your take. Okay quarter. We saw some good earnings, but the stock, in many cases, my old company, Home Depot, really got whacked for $4 or something like that. And you look at some of the others. What's driving good numbers? But is it the uncertainty, the forecast?
I think it's the uncertainty. You're definitely seeing the alpha that's being created between the guys that are beating on top and bottom lines versus the ones that are missing. The winners are really only up 0.5 percentage point on those reports, where the losers are down 1.5 percentage points. Usually you see a much bigger spread between the two. So I think there's just a lot of uncertainty right now, and that is very typical going into an election period as we enter this final quarter of the year. And so I think management teams are being very cautious on guidance, and because there is still that uncertainty. But the good thing is the stock market usually does really well after the election is done. It's up about 2%, according to work by my colleague Sam Stovall in the 3 months preceding.
Because even with Apple's guidance on revenue for the current quarter, it came in above expectations, and it will show a revenue gain from a year ago, and it doesn't seem to be enough. So it was despite what the stated number from Analyst was. Now, granted, the stock was up about 20% in the few months leading up to this earnings report, but nevertheless, that still wasn't good enough.
Well, I think expectations just got really high. Samsung got people really excited that Apple is going to finally take off and benefit from this. Hey, Tim Cook was really upbeat about the iPhone sales going into this quarter, so we do have that to look forward to, but there's still the supply issue.
Do you think, speak to that, but according to one analyst, there's like an 8-week wait for the Plus version of the phone, which has kind of the new fancy camera on it. So supply, you're right, supply is an issue.
Yeah, and that's why
Tim Cook tipped his head to that.
And you're seeing this quarter, the semiconductor companies are really doing well and beating, and part of it's because of the demand for these smartphones, the iPhone.
That's what Paul Meeks told us yesterday. Micron Technology is one to watch. So when you look at sectors, where is the growth right now? Financials have been better than expected, up 13% on average in terms of earnings. Materials as well. Is that where you're finding growth in this economy?
Well, look, I think that's what the numbers are saying. Right now, the financials expectations were super low going into the quarter. Financials and materials, you're going over easy numbers from a year ago. I think we need to really watch the consumer discretionary sector going forward, because growth there is only supposed to be 3%, which is pretty weak when you look across the 11 sectors. We have Amazon coming out this week. Numbers came down by 13 cents since they last reported, and they've just blown the numbers out of the park the last 2 quarters. I bet they do it again this quarter. We heard from Microsoft about the cloud business. They're going to do really well there. Prime is going to be key going into the holiday selling season. So I think the consumer numbers right now are understated. Automobiles, GM and Ford are huge within that sector, so that makes a difference. And GM did a really good job yesterday. We'll hear from Ford. That was a bigger concern. Yeah. So I think the consumer's doing really well. Confidence numbers, I know, for the latest read were very weak. They came down off of the cycle highs in September, but that's typical going into election period. And the good news is that the job data underlying all that is really good. The consumer is feeling confident about their ability to find a job and their wage increase.
That's really interesting, because that's so different than what we're hearing on the political spectrum and what voters are saying versus what they're saying from an economic perspective. When you look at going into the holiday holiday season. Do you expect Google to make a big splash with their new phone? And what do you think? What is the Apple-Google interplay over the holiday buying season?
Well, I think that it's going to be a very interesting holiday buying season for the smartphone industry. It's a really pivotal point because the Google phone's a new thing. They're going to be out there this holiday season. The iPhone, everyone's expecting to benefit from the Samsung debacle. And hey, what about Android? And it's going to be interesting to watch it all play out.
Amazon expected to see earnings growth of 350%. Wow.
Amazon's poised to be the country's biggest apparel retailer. That there will be sell more clothing than any other store in the nation.
This is an incredible number that they're expecting earnings to be up 354% at Amazon.
You know, but Jeff's doing a wonderful job with the Echo, and he is connecting the entire home. I mean, he really has that thing extremely well positioned, voice recognition. He keeps adding more devices to it. He's got a great strategy as it relates to, you know, that technology for the home. One quick question. Look forward. GDP next year, are we going to start off at 3.5% and then walk it back again like we have the last 8 to about 1.5?
That is the historical trend. So, I mean, I do think that we have some things to be a little more hopeful about next year. The strength in the consumer hopefully continues. We're starting to see some of the industrial numbers get a little bit better. And then if we just see stabilization across the world, it could be a really good thing for us.
Do you think this is the bottom here in terms of earnings? We're just seeing a little growth, which is what you were happy about in terms of S&P earnings, even though it's just 0.6%.
Yeah.
But do you think this is the bottom?
I do. I think we really put the trough in the first quarter of this year as far as earnings go. But we're going to need to see the economy, to your point, pick up substantially to really get solid earnings growth because buybacks have been playing a large role in earnings for the last several quarters.
You know, a small indicator is if you look at fracking, you know, we have bottomed out with the number of rigs out there. And for the first time, we're seeing a little bump off of the bottom of 480 up to a little over 500 now. So I don't know if that's an early indicator or not.
Well, we'll hear from a lot of the energy companies tomorrow and Friday. So.
Yes.
Lindsey, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Lindsey Bell joining us there. Coming up.